guess first up is the silencing of women, which I'm really seeing a lot lately. And maybe it's been around for a long time, but it's really here at the moment. I mean, we've seen Claire Chandler make the most innocuous statements, and suddenly she's hauled for Equal Opportunity Board in Tasmania, which I just find absolutely appalling. Rosie Duffield in Scotland, she's a Scottish parliamentarian. She has had a lot of problems from her own party because she speaks up. Kelly J. Keane was arrested the other day in Leeds. She didn't even get to talk because they said you were allowed to have a protest if it was a political protest, and apparently arguing about women's rights isn't a political protest. So I don't know what it is if it's not political. And Beth Rep recently as well, she was silenced with a $10,000 judgment against her. So I think it's a massive issue. I think it's something we've never seen before to this degree, that you cannot talk, you cannot even say, in fact, things I'm saying now, like biological sex is real. I'm probably making someone, well, I could make someone feel very uncomfortable and therefore be dragged before some equal opportunity board to explain myself. And that's just a dreadful state of affairs. It just has to stop. And we need to wind back the legislation. If this is how it's going to be used, we have to get rid of it. It just cannot prevail. And I guess on top of that, with the silencing, there's also so much online abuse, which I just find extraordinary. There's the abuse of J.K. Rowling. There's just abuse online of women who dare speak their truths in the most mild way. They are threatened with rape, they're threatened with murder. It's just extraordinary, and yet so few people are speaking up about it. So I would absolutely say that to me is the most important issue that we need to deal with at the moment.
Great, thank you so much. Let's go to Bronwyn.
Yeah, okay, I agree with Beth. I think in Australia, the introduction of sex self-ID legislation in Tasmania and Victoria is perhaps the most significant challenge to the sex-based rights of female people in this country. Proponents of the legislation in Tasmania speak of it in glowing terms. Apparently it's the world's gold standard of trans rights laws. In fact, it's a dangerous precedent, I think, for other jurisdictions considering legislation to allow for formal recognition of gender changes, and gender in inverted commas. If people have to accept that a man in a female-only space may be legally female and be present there legitimately, that the safety of women is unavoidably compromised. No amount of bleating about trans women who just want to pee is going to change male pattern violence towards women and girls. We know this, but we don't want to take away trans rights, but we want to sensibly protect the rights of female people to privacy and security as much as we possibly can. Fortunately, it seems the UK government has abandoned plans to overhaul their Gender Recognition Act in order to allow sex self-ID. This is a positive development, but it doesn't help Tasmania or Victoria or any other jurisdiction already burdened with these iniquitous laws. In many ways, however, sex self-ID legislation is merely formalising the infiltration of gender ideology into all aspects of our public lives. In the name of inclusivity for trans and gender diverse people, society and its institutions are undergoing changes that clearly erode the sex-based rights of women and girls, like men in women's sports and women's prisons and shelters, and men tending to female patients in hospitals and aged care facilities, and men taking positions in education and public life supposedly set aside for women, and men and boys in Girl Guides. This goes on, and it's growing. Our situation, I think, as women and girls, has reached the point where we need to strip the discourse back to its bare bones. We should be talking about the things that make the class of people that are female unique and different to male people, not better or lesser than, but equal and different. I have 4 children, and I know raising them compromised my career progression. I also know it was a choice to bear children and care for them, a choice, by the way, that many of the world's women and girls don't have. But if I were male, pregnancy and childbirth are things I would never need to consider, and that's a really massive advantage. Certainly, men and boys have their own challenges and expectations to meet, but they do so, in most cases, unhindered by a body that throws capricious shit at them all the time, laying low with period pain, getting unexpectedly pregnant, inviting unwanted sexual advances. I could go on, but you get it. I've raised 4 sons to adulthood, and I've seen firsthand what a cruisy rider can be when your body isn't constantly cramping your style.
Thanks very much. And now we'll go to Janet.
I agree with my colleagues on the panel that legal issues are really vital to this. I think the capture of the legal profession has been swift and profound, and I don't know what's behind it. I know that in Sydney, where I live, if you took all the gay men out of law, you'd have 3 blokes and a dog left, pretty much. Oh. So I don't know if it's, the glitzy takeover via Denton's, the T now is in all of the originally really awesome activist groups. Like ACON was a brilliant activist group that was set up because gay men were dying of what was practically a plague at the time, and they did brilliant work. But of course, a lot of the reason for them to exist has now wound back, and their main forms of profit are now PrEP, aimed at gay men, and transing people. Hence, they run the website Trans Hub, which is aimed at transitioning adolescents. So I think there are so many issues. This is a broad church. Pick one and work on it. I don't care what you do, but do something for God's sake. It's urgent. I think that we need to address the issues that the Sex Discrimination Act changes have raised for us, because somebody just did a find and replace on the sex discrimination part and turned it into the gender identity part without actually thinking that perhaps these might at some point conflict. So I think that is a massive problem, and I think as feminists, the program, which has never gone away from us, is raising our children to be children, not to be little sexualized adults. And I think that my children who are now teens, I have seen the growth of the pinkification even over the last 2 decades, and it has been profound. And it is not surprising to me that people who have to know the sex of a fetus in order to decorate the nursery and buy the clothes and talk about whether this is a ballerina or a footballer in utero, are willing to take the next step of believing that humans' sex is not immutable, and that the ballerina and the football might be in the wrong bodies because the ballerina likes footy. So I think that ongoing profound sexism is one of the big keys that has led us to this appalling situation where those children are now being iatrogenically medicated. So just pick something and do it, please.